The moment my father walked into my apartment without knocking, again, I knew something was different this time. He wasn't alone. My brother was behind him, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning my living room like he was measuring for furniture. And behind my brother was his girlfriend, Renee, holding what I can only describe as a very permanent-looking duffel bag. I'd been sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold beside my laptop. I had a deadline in 4 hours. I was a UX designer and I worked from home, which my family had somehow interpreted over the years to mean that I was always available, always flexible, always willing to drop whatever I was doing because I didn't have a real office to go to. I was 29. I had lived in this apartment for 3 years. I had signed the lease. I paid the rent. $1,840 a month for a 1-bedroom in Columbus, Ohio. I had furnished it myself, piece by piece, starting with a secondhand couch and a mattress on the floor, and working my way up to something that finally felt like mine. My father looked around the apartment the way he always did, with this slight expression of approval mixed with something I could never quite name. Like he was proud but also slightly offended that I had managed to build something without him. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. "Hey, Dad." I closed my laptop halfway. "I have a deadline today. This won't take long." That specific sentence. I should have stood up right then. I should have said, "Actually, now is not a good time. Can we schedule something?" But I didn't, because I had spent 29 years being the daughter who made things easy for everyone else, and old habits are almost impossible to break in the moment, even when every nerve in your body is telling you something is wrong. My brother, he's 3 years older than me, 32, and he has never in his adult life held a job for more than 14 months, sat down on my couch without being invited. Renee sat beside him. She smiled at me in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "So," my father said, he pulled out one of my kitchen chairs and sat down across from me, which meant he was sitting at my table, in my apartment, in a chair he had not been offered. "We need to talk about the situation." "What situation?" "Your brother's situation." I looked at my brother. My brother looked at the floor. Here's the situation, as I understood it at that moment. My brother and Renee had been renting a 2-bedroom apartment across town for the past 8 months. The lease was up at the end of the month. They had not renewed it. I found out later, much later, after everything, that they had stopped paying rent 2 months before the lease ended and had essentially been waiting out an eviction that never fully arrived because the landlord had been slow with the paperwork. But I didn't know any of that yet. What I knew was that my father was sitting at my kitchen table with the expression he got when he had already made a decision and was now simply informing me of it. "He needs a place to stay," my father said, "temporarily, just until they get back on their feet." Temporarily meaning what? A few months, maybe through summer. It was March. I want to be clear about something. I love my brother. I do. But loving someone does not mean you are required to absorb the consequences of every choice they make. I had learned this slowly, painfully, over the course of about a decade, and I was still learning it, apparently, because what came out of my mouth next was not no. It was, where would they even sleep? "You have a couch," my father said. "I have a 1-bedroom apartment. You work from home. You're here all day. The couch is big enough." Renee smiled again. My brother was still looking at the floor. "I'm not really comfortable with." "She's not comfortable," my brother said suddenly, and the way he said it was sharp, like I had done something insulting. "Of course she's not comfortable. She never wants to help." "That's not what I said." "You didn't have to." My father held up a hand. "Let's not do this." He looked at me. "It's family. You have the space. You're not using it." "It's my space." "It's your brother." That's how it always went. That's the exact structure of the argument, and it worked on me every time because there is a very specific guilt that comes from being the one in the family who has managed to get stable. Like your stability is a resource that belongs to everyone. Like you don't have the right to protect it because other people need it more. I said I would think about it. My father nodded like I had said yes. They left. I sat there with my cold coffee and my half-open laptop, and I thought about the fact that my brother had just sat on my couch and looked at my floor while my father asked me to give up my living room for the next 5 months, and neither of them had said please. I did not say yes. I want to be clear about that too, because the next 2 weeks felt like a slow campaign designed to make me feel like I already had. My mother called me 3 times. She didn't ask, she framed it as updates. Your father told your brother you'd think about it, so they're looking at logistics. As though my thinking about it was a yes. As though agreeing to consider something was the same as agreeing to the thing itself. My aunt texted me. My aunt, who I saw maybe twice a year at holidays, texted me to say that family takes care of family, and she hoped I was thinking about what mattered. What mattered? I called my best friend on a Tuesday evening and sat on my bathroom floor and said, "Am I being selfish?" And she said, without hesitating, "No, but they want you to think you are, so keep asking yourself that question until it becomes true." She was not wrong. Here's what I did that week. The week I was thinking about it, I changed my locks. I want to explain this because I know it sounds like an escalation, but here's the thing. My parents had a key to my apartment. I had given it to them 2 years earlier when I was traveling for a work conference and needed someone to water my plants. I had asked for it back. My mother had said she kept it just in case. And somehow, in the way these things go in families, I had let it slide. And for 2 years, they had had a key to a place where I lived alone. I called a locksmith on a Wednesday afternoon. I paid $180 for a new deadbolt and a new handle lock. I did not tell anyone. I did not announce it. I just did it. And then I stood in my hallway afterward and felt something shift slightly in my chest, like a door closing quietly. I also bought a video doorbell, the kind that shows you a live feed on your phone and records anyone who approaches. I installed it myself on a Saturday morning, watching 3 YouTube tutorials in a row until I understood how it worked. I tested it 4 times. It worked. And then I waited, because I had a feeling. I was on a video call with a client on a Thursday morning, 11 days after my father had sat down at my kitchen table uninvited, when my phone buzzed with the doorbell notification. I glanced at it. My father, my mother, and behind them, my brother and Renee. My brother had a box in his arms. Renee had 2 bags. My mother had a laundry basket. I watched the notification for 1 second. Then I excused myself from the call, told my client I'd be back in 5 minutes, muted myself, and walked to my front door. I did not open it. I heard the key in the lock first, the scratcher metal against metal, then a pause, then it again, and again, and then knocking. "Honey," my mother's voice. "Honey, the key isn't working." I said nothing. "There must be something wrong with the lock. Can you open the door?" I stood with my hand flat against the door and I breathed. In through my nose, out through my mouth. I was not calm. I want to be honest about that. My heart was going fast and my hands were slightly cold, and there was a part of me that wanted to open the door just to make the feeling stop. That's the thing nobody tells you about holding a boundary. It doesn't feel righteous in the moment. It feels terrible. It feels like you're doing something wrong even when you're not. I opened the door. My mother had the laundry basket. My father was behind her. My brother had the box. Renee had the bags. They were all looking at me like I was the last step of a plan they had already completed. "The lock," my mother started. "I changed it," I said. Silence. "You changed it," my father repeated. "Yes." Without telling us. "It's my apartment." My mother looked at my father. My father looked at my brother. My brother looked at me with an expression that I recognized from childhood. It was the same expression he got when I got a better grade than him on a test. This mixture of resentment and something almost like disbelief. Like the rules should not apply to me the way they applied to him. "We thought it was settled," my mother said. Nothing was settled. I said I would think about it. We gave up their apartment. I felt something go cold in my chest. Not anger. Something quieter than anger. "What do you mean you gave up their apartment?" "Their lease was up. We told them you had room." "I never said yes." "You never said no." And there it is. That's the sentence. That's the exact sentence that had been used against me my entire life in 100 different versions. You never said no. As though the absence of an explicit refusal is the same as consent. As though I was required to fight off every assumption with a formal declaration, and anything less than that was agreement. I looked at my brother. Did you give up your apartment? He looked slightly to the left of my face. We didn't renew. Based on what? I never told you you'd stay here. Dad said. Dad doesn't live here. My father stepped forward slightly. Let's just calm down. I am calm. And I was, at that point. The adrenaline had passed the peak, and I was on the other side of it, which is the part that feels very still and very clear. I'm very calm. I'm telling you that I didn't agree to this, and I'm telling you that the answer is no. So you're going to let your brother live on the street. My mother's voice had changed. It had gone soft in a way that wasn't soft at all. That's the kind of person you are. I didn't create this situation. You could help end it. By letting 4 people move into my 1-bedroom apartment for 5 months. By being a family. I had practiced for this. Not because I had planned this specific conversation, but because my friend had made me practice, had sat across from me 2 days earlier and said hard things in the voice of my family and made me answer until I stopped crying and started speaking. I don't know if I would have made it through without that. I think I might have cracked somewhere around the word family. But I had practiced, and so I knew what to say. I love you, I said. I love all of you, and I'm not going to do this. Not because I don't love you, but because this is my home and I have the right to decide who lives in it, and I'm deciding. My brother set the box down on the hallway floor. He did it the way you set something down when you want the sound of it to mean something. You know what your problem is? He said. You've always thought you were better than us. I don't think that. You act like it. You got your little job, your little apartment, and now you're too good to help your own family. I have helped. I lent you $600 for your car registration last year. I covered your phone bill for 3 months when you lost your job in 2022. I bought Renee's birthday dinner because you said you were short. I've helped. He didn't have an answer for that. I had the receipts, literally. I had gone through my Venmo history before this conversation because I knew somehow that it would come to this. This is different, he said finally. Why? Because we need a place to live. And I've given you money and time and space every time you've needed it. But I'm not giving you my home. That's the line. My father tried one more time. He pulled me aside in the hallway while my mother talked to my brother, and he used his quiet voice, the one that had always worked when I was younger because it sounded like reason. You know this isn't easy for me either, he said. I know. He's my son. I know that too. I just need you to bend a little. I've been bending my whole life, Dad. I'm not flexible anymore. I'm just bent. He looked at me for a long moment. He had gray at his temples now that hadn't been there 5 years ago. And I noticed it the way you notice things about the people you love when you're in the middle of something hard. Too clearly, with too much feeling. I don't know where they're going to go, he said. That's not something I caused. I know that sounds hard, but it's true. He nodded slowly. Not an agreement, I don't think. More like acknowledgement. Like he was hearing something he didn't want to hear but couldn't argue with. They took the box. They took the bags and the laundry basket. My mother didn't say goodbye to me. She walked past me without looking at me, and I stood in my doorway and watched them go to the elevator, and my brother turned around once, halfway down the hall, and I thought he was going to say something. He didn't. He turned back around. The elevator doors opened and closed. I went inside, I locked the new deadbolt. I went back to my kitchen table and I unmuted my work call and I said, sorry about that family thing. And my client said, no worries, and we kept going. For 2 weeks after that, I was the villain. My mother called me every other day, and each call was a variation on the same theme. Your brother is staying at a friend's place. He has nowhere to go. Renee is upset. This is not what families do. I listened. I did not change my answer. I want to be honest that this was not easy, that there were 2 or 3 nights where I lay awake second-guessing myself so hard that my chest hurt, because that's what guilt does. It doesn't care whether it's logical. It just hurts. My aunt stopped texting. A cousin I hadn't heard from in 4 years called me out of nowhere to say she thought I was being cold. I didn't know. My cousin knew enough about my life to have an opinion about it, but apparently the family group chat had been busy. My friend came over and sat with me on the couch that my brother had wanted to sleep on, and we watched television, and she said, "You're doing the right thing," approximately 7 times over 4 hours, which is the correct number. 3 weeks later, my brother texted me. Not an apology exactly, more of a reset. He said that he and Renee had found a studio apartment, smaller than what they'd had, on the east side. He said it wasn't great, but it was something. He said, and this is the part that got me, the part I read 4 times. He said that he guessed he should have had a plan B. He should have had a plan B. Not, I shouldn't have assumed. Not, I'm sorry for putting you in that position, but it was something. It was a crack of acknowledgement in a wall that had been solid my whole life, and I'll take a crack. I texted back, "I'm glad you found something. Let me know if you want to get coffee sometime." He didn't respond for a week. Then he said, "Yeah, maybe. Maybe as a start." My father called me on a Sunday afternoon about a month later. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. He didn't bring up the apartment. He asked how work was going. He asked if I'd seen the game Friday night. I hadn't, and told me about a play that apparently had been impressive. We talked for 22 minutes about nothing in particular, which is longer than we had talked in months, and it felt almost normal. Almost like before all of this. Before he hung up, he said quietly, "You always land on your feet." I didn't know how to answer that, so I said, "I try." "You're good at it," he said. "You always have been." I think it was the closest he was going to get to saying he understood, and I think, for my father, it was actually pretty close. I hung up and sat with my coffee, warm this time, and looked at my apartment. The couch that nobody else slept on. The deadbolt that only my key opened. The little camera by the front door that had showed me exactly what was coming before it arrived. I had known for a long time that I couldn't keep making myself smaller to fit the space my family had decided I should occupy. I just hadn't known what it would feel like to finally stop. It felt quiet. It felt like mine. That was enough. There's a moment I keep coming back to. Not the moment I changed the locks, and not the moment I opened the door and saw my father standing there with my brother's boxes. The moment I keep coming back to is quieter than both of those. It's the moment I sat on my bathroom floor talking to my best friend and asked out loud whether I was being selfish. That question. The fact that I even had to ask it tells you everything about how long I had been living the wrong way. I had been generous. I want to say that plainly because I think people who set boundaries sometimes get painted as cold or withholding, and that wasn't who I was. I had covered my brother's phone bill. I had paid for Renee's birthday dinner. I had lent money I never asked to get back. I had been generous, and somewhere along the way, my family had quietly reclassified my generosity as an obligation. And the thing about that reclassification is that it happens so slowly you don't notice until someone shows up at your door with boxes and a laundry basket and a key that no longer works. What I had to learn, and I mean really learn, not just understand in theory, is that doing the right thing and doing the easy thing are almost never the same. The easy thing would have been to open that door. It would have bought me 2 weeks of peace before it cost me 5 months of my home and probably a year of my stability. I had done the easy thing so many times before that I had convinced myself it was kindness. It wasn't. It was avoidance dressed up in family loyalty. The preparation mattered. I don't say that to sound strategic or cold. I say it because I think there's something important in the fact that I didn't just react. I thought ahead. I went through my Venmo history before that conversation. I changed the lock before anyone arrived. I installed the camera and tested it 4 times. I practiced what I would say with someone who made me say it out loud until I stopped crying. That's not manipulation. That's knowing yourself well enough to understand that you will not be your best self in the moment if you haven't prepared for it. Being smart about protecting yourself is not the same as being cruel. I had to learn that too. And the hardest part, harder than the conversation itself, harder than the 2 weeks of silence from my mother, was staying steady in the aftermath. Anyone can hold a boundary in the heat of the moment. The real test is whether you hold it at 2 in the morning when the guilt is loudest and there's no one around to remind you why you made the decision you made. I lay awake more than once. My chest hurt. I second-guessed myself in ways that felt very real and very convincing. But I didn't call and take it back. Because I understood, somewhere underneath all of it, that every time I took it back, I was teaching my family that the boundary wasn't real. That I didn't mean it. That if they pushed hard enough, I would move. My father said before he hung up the phone a month later that I always landed on my feet. I think he meant it as a compliment. I think he also meant it as a small, quiet acknowledgement that I had been right. My family has not stopped loving me. My brother texted. My father called. Things are not perfect and they may never be, but they are honest now in a way they weren't before. And honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, is a more solid foundation than the kind of peace that depends on one person perpetually giving way. I still have the deadbolt. I still have the camera. And every morning when I lock my door on my way out, I think, this is what it feels like when a thing actually belongs to you.